Hey everybody, new podcast now with Mark Manuel from Industrial Marketing. An awesome conversation. I think this is a great podcast for marketers and salespeople. Mark is very focused on selling to the manufacturing industry. So we talk a little bit about that, the current state of marketing and how he's seen it change. And then we dive into some of his personal life and the decisions he's made along his career to get to where he is today, founding his own organization after 10 years at a previous one. So great conversation. Mark's got a ton of energy. It's one of those guys you could have talked to for 4 hours. His favorite quote that he lives up to is, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I think that gives you a good vibe for who Mark is as a person. Check it out. I hope you love it. Mr. Mark Manuel, thanks for coming on Beers and Careers.
Cheers, man. Thank you. This is a huge honor. You have no idea.
No, I appreciate it. I'm always humbled when people say yes to coming on. So, in true Beers and Careers fashion, we start. We got to know what your favorite drink is, since it's Beers and Careers. So, what is it?
Well, I have to say, for beer, it's Guinness.
Okay.
And Maker's Mark Scotch. Just straight up.
Straight up.
There it is.
Yeah, a man after my own heart. Those are two of my favorites. I love that. Do you have a favorite quote? You a quote guy?
You know, I'm really not.
Okay.
I love reading them. Just in my own mind, when I'm not motivated to do something, I will always say to myself, if it is to be, it's up to me. Now, maybe somebody said that, but that's just my own sort of quote when you have to do something you don't want to do, or you have to go to deal with something that's not pleasant.
I like that though.
Yep.
It's very gives you the strength to carry on in a tough moment.
Exactly right.
Are you? Do you swear? You got a favorite curse word?
The F word is unfortunately too much.
It's
too much.
It's the perennial.
Yes.
It's the perennial contender on this one. What was your first job? Doesn't have to be.
Sure, no.
Official W-2.
It was, I was in high school just after graduating. I was a petroleum transport engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually took gas from the pump and I pumped it in someone's car. So that was on my resume.
No way.
I pumped gas.
Yeah, pump gas. I love it.
And so, yeah, petroleum transport engineer. So I always make that joke and people will laugh at me. But I actually had to ride my bike 5.5 miles to have this job. And it was a wonderful job. It was a wonderful summer. So, yeah.
That's too funny. Yeah. So you did that right after high school?
Yeah.
Or right after college? Or
right after high school. Yep.
All right, awesome. That's too funny. Favorite book? I know you're a reader.
Yeah.
So I know I'm kind of asking you a hard one.
No. You know what? What's funny is there's a guy named Douglas Burdett that just stopped his podcast, which is called the Marketing Book Podcast, after about 560 episodes.
Okay.
And he interviewed 300 or 400 different authors. Louis Gadima, who wrote the Bullseye Marketing, was on twice. And I just gave you that book. It's one of my favorite marketing books for small business of all time. But David Meerman Scott, who wrote, I think in his 9th edition, The New Rules of Marketing and PR and Marketing, is just a legend. He's here from Boston, somebody that I take a lot from. And probably my third favorite author, because there's so many.
Yeah.
It's a guy named Mark Schaefer, who's a professor at Rutgers, and he's written Marketing Rebellion, but he wrote a book that I love, Cumulative Advantage, and we all have to figure that out, what's our unique advantage, but it's, those three probably inform me the best.
And what, like cumulative advantage, what's he talking about in that one?
Well, it's funny, when you're trying to go in competition with somebody, when Tom Brady was going back in the pocket, he's looking for a seam in the defense. The defense, they're throwing different things at you, and to the extent that you can take the knowledge of your business, of your life, and find the seam, that's where the opportunities lie.
Okay.
And it's a really wonderful. It's a wonderful book.
All right, I'll check it out. I wrote it down. Yeah. Cumulative advantage.
Yep.
So for you, right? We've known each other for
a decade.
Yeah, probably a decade now. Networking.
Yep.
The power of networking.
Yep.
Like when I was looking at your background on LinkedIn, because it's funny, you know someone, and then I know you as Mark, and a guy who always willing to connect me with people, and I try to do the same. Right? Networking is really about giving more than anything else.
100%.
But Did you have a moment, and I want to go through some of your career and how you got to doing what you do today.
Sure.
But did you have a moment in your career when you were like, this isn't a job anymore?
Yeah.
This is me. Like, this is what I was meant to be doing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't have a real job until I was 29.
Okay.
So I worked for family business. And, when I think back, I said, gee, I wish my dad had sent me off to work for someone else. I might have ended up...
Oh, you worked for your family business?
I worked for my family business.
Okay, what was it?
Well, when I got out of college, Boston College, we had a family shopping center, and at first, I did all the leases, and we had 17 tenants, and I had 3 bankers. I got to know the people in this town, and it was an interesting time for me, just out of college, and doing everything from sweeping the parking lot to painting to being that person that was very attentive to that, and that was a very interesting time because in 1978 we had interest rates of 18%.
Right.
And I quickly understood the power of the relationship, especially of bankers, and what they look at in terms of character, capacity, collateral, in terms of how you want to grow your business. And I had a chance to meet a couple of really amazing men that I learned a lot about business. A gentleman that went on to become the chairman of the board of TD Bank North was a young banker in our shopping center. He ran 16 branches, Bill Ryan. And Bill told me, Mark, I never want to see anybody waiting to give me their money, and I never want anyone to be rushing to give me money at the bank and the door's closed. So he always opened the bank 10 minutes before his hours and closed it 10 minutes later. And he used that philosophy as he bought up all these banks. And even today, TD Bank, America's most convenient bank. I just remember that lesson when I was a young guy, and really sort of invaluable stuff. But my family ended up, my dad bought a 100,000 square foot tennis club and racquetball club.
Oh, no way.
2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. I was skinny once. And this was 1983.
Before the Guinness and Makers caught up with you?
It's that. And I added, we were the second health club in New England to add Nautilus. We bought 5. We've got 5 Nautilus pieces. And I'll never forget, Mark, we were signing up 10 people a day. They were waiting in line to use a Nautilus machine because back then, Nautilus, if you just used it, you were supposed to be ripped like some kind of Adonis. And of course, we found out later that wasn't the case,
right?
Unless you really committed to it. But it was an interesting time. And it was actually April 1st of 1983. And we talk about shifts in behavior. And my bank at the time was Bay Bank Middlesex, and the president of the bank was friendly with me, and I was talking about, I just opened up 1,100 checks for $30. Took me 2.5 days to do that. There's got to be a better way. And he said, there's a new concept. We were looking for a guinea pig. It's called electronic fund transfer. Would you like to try it out? So I was the first customer for Bay Bank Middlesex in 1983, June 1st, and my members loved it. I loved the fact that I knew I had the money to pay my bills in the first of the month.
Right.
And it was really interesting as you start to see the transformation, the seams in the advantages of how to do business. So
that's cool. Very cool.
It was. And
so you're doing the because there's a bunch of topics I like when I thought about connecting with you today. It's like I definitely want to talk about marketing and networking from us and that from what I know of our relationship.
Right.
But also when you're having these conversations, you find out other things that you want to dive into. But before we get into that, like, can you give people like the 2-minute overview, the 2-minute drill of maybe? It sounds like you were working at that at your family's business. From there to where you're doing now, like, can you give us that 2-minute overview of your career path?
Yeah, and it was I really didn't have any particular plan.
Which is the point of the podcast and why I wanted to have you on. It's 100%. Like no one knows where they're going,
and
or very few people.
My gift has always been sales and relationships and getting to know people. And from the instance, from the bank, from the shopping center to when I ran the health club, I was going to every single company within 5 miles of my business, meeting the HR director, meeting the owner, giving them free guest passes for all their new employees, doing this hosting. And I all of a sudden, the Chamber of Commerce approached me and said, hey, would you like to join a membership committee, go to the board of directors? And I started to see the value of the relationship in terms of the chamber. And after I left the family business...
so this is while you're at the Club.
Yeah, the Racquet Health Club.
Yeah.
And one of the things interesting back then, I had to spend $60,000 a year in Yellow Page advertising. Our business was in Tewksbury, which meant I had to advertise in the Lowell book, but I had to advertise the Woburn book, and there was a Haverhill book, and there was an Ayer book, and a Newburyport book. And when somebody new moved into an area, they don't know anybody, so they would go to Yellow Pages. I'm looking for Health Club, sort of like I go to Google, right? And so it was really funny as I would study that. I every time I traveled to a conference, I would rip out the ads on Yellow Pages about the health clubs and racquetball clubs and say, how can I, be better? So when I left the family business, it was because a friend of mine was starting up with this startup. This was when voicemail was just beginning, but it was called the Talking Phone Book.
Okay.
And because I advertised on it and I saw the business, what they did was, let's come up with one phone book instead of having to have 5 books, and let's have the ability to call a local number and find out the sports scores and the lottery and all this stuff. So it was the beginning of content driving activity. And it was a wonderful experience for me. It was my first real job. Quota was $20,000. In my first month, I did $90,000. My second month, I did $150,000. And they said, "Hey, would you take over this territory?" And we had 70 sales reps. Now I'd worked with these people for 2 months.
Right.
And I got rid of 50 of them, and we did more revenue the next month with the 20 that were the producers, because I always considered anything I'd ever did, even though I didn't own that business, it's my money, and how do I create better value and create a better culture for the folks that are there. So anyway, I went from the transition from Yellow Pages to telephony. Used to be, it would cost you 10 cents a minute to call from Marlborough to Andover, Mass. And of course, when the whole telephone changed, I got into the understanding networks, and I worked for computer telephone. I worked for a company called the USN Communications. It was the first reseller of the local company, and I found my way to a company called Ziplink, which was a dial-up internet company. I could make you look like you were AOL, even though you had a local business here in Marlborough. And what was interesting, when I went to work for this company, everyone that worked for the company came out of the pager industry. If you remember back when there were pagers, there were national companies that could give you a number, but a lot of times you might have a local company that could give you Massachusetts, but you couldn't get Rhode Island or Connecticut. And there's the same thing that was happening when the ISPs were setting up. A lot of local folks were buying modems, setting up, and they would provide for the local area. But if I left Marlborough and went to work in Texas, I'd have to go to AOL.
Yeah, right.
So Ziplink, which was the company in Lowell, could provide this incredible value of making you look like you were everywhere.
Right.
So what was interesting to me, because I understood networks, the people that owned this company came out of paging, and they didn't understand networks. So when I joined them, they were a $9 million company.
Okay.
90% of the revenue came from one company, Web.com, which was owned by Microsoft, and they had about 30 other clients. And so I looked around, and they had 6 people in sales, and they weren't really selling. They didn't know what they were selling. They didn't define the product. But because I understood that the advantage that Ziplink had was they used a technology called Radius. I could set you up in 5 minutes and let you try my network, where all the competitors, it would take 2 months for them to put you in their system.
Like the onboarding process.
In terms of getting it set up.
Yeah.
So what I did was I came up with a very simple process. I had the sales reps calling, meeting the small ISP, saying, "Look, I'm going to give you my network for free for a month so you can try it out. And if you'd like it, then this is what we charge." And I took that little company from $9 million to $53 million. We added 1,000 ISPs in 9 months. And when they hired me, I wanted to be VP of sales of this publicly traded company, because it had gone public before I joined. And the president said to me, "I want to hire somebody with experience, and I'll have you interview them." And everyone that came in was a wonderful theoretical, could teach marketing and sales, but didn't understand where the rubber hit the road. That if you don't generate the sales, if you're not doing the work, so within 6 months, they said, "You got the job. Don't worry about it. Keep going." And it was a really interesting time. Now, unfortunately, technology. We used to buy a switch from AT&T or Lucent that cost $15 million. would buy a T1 that would cost $1,000 a month, and I could provide service for 23, so many people with that. And some really smart software guys came up with a soft switch that they created of just software, no hardware, for $300,000. So the T1 went from $1,000 to $30 a month, so we can have high-speed access at our homes.
Wow.
ZipLink, the whole internet thing, that was the bubble. It was all because of technology. It wasn't because of any other competition. And so that was again another very interesting.
So this is 01.
This was exactly 01. And so anyway, because I understood networks and telephony, it's just interesting that I was always intrigued by the technology that was changing the business. And when I went to work for yellowpages.com, which was a division of AT&T, a few years after this.
Oh, okay.
Again, going back to my Yellow Page days, people were still spending $50,000, $80,000 for a full page ad. And I would walk into a company and I'd talk to the owner. I'd say, do you use the internet? So, well, yeah, we use the internet. I said, well, do you think more than 50% of people use the internet? Oh, yeah, I really do. I said, well, my investment advisor tells me I shouldn't put all my eggs in one basket. How much money are you investing in online advertising? And they'd say nothing. I said, well, here's the good news. Let's take 10% of that and I can, do these things for you. And again, when I talk about the seam and the way that people were behaving, in the old days, I had to pick up the phone to call you. I didn't have any other option. And so it was interesting because I was around the internet. I met the guys that started Google in 1999 when everyone used Yahoo, Alta Vista, Lycos. And I'm curious. I'm a curious salesperson. I'm curious why people do anything. And if I can't understand their behavior, then I don't understand how to sell them. And that's sort of been my whole life, the whole experience of the relationships as being really old school, being so important, but then understanding the behavior of people much younger than me.
Right.
And how and why they do what they do. So it's been an interesting sort of time. And if I fast forward over a few jobs, probably the biggest impact for me was I got a call. Well, a very good friend of mine was one of the first 30 or 40 employees at a company called HubSpot that I knew about. And when he first started at HubSpot, I remember going to visit him in Cambridge, and he was working in a cube and calling companies. And he said, "Yeah, I'm calling moving companies. We do SEO." I said, "Great." I said, "Well, let me ask you. After you sell 10 moving companies, what do you do?" He said, "I don't really know. I guess I sell another city." I thought to myself, what a stupid idea for a company. Now, this was before you understood their software, what they were building. This was way back. But my friend told me, "Mark, you got to check out this company called ThomasNet, thomasnet.com." And it's ThomasNet was started in 1898. They published these books of every manufacturer in North America. And I'm thinking, well, what is ThomasNet? Why would anybody go to ThomasNet? I use Google and Amazon every day. I'm pretty good at it. But yet I came to find out that thousands and thousands of engineers and supply chain professionals went to ThomasNet directly. And so again, I'm curious, why would somebody do that? Who does that? But what I did know is that my friend that worked at HubSpot said, Mark, this company ThomasNet, at the time in 2013, was the #1 agency in the world out of 1,000 agencies. This was when HubSpot was still privately held. And we only did manufacturing.
Right.
And we made our clients a lot of money. Now, the secret sauce was, and this was something that really taught me about intent. When an engineer 300 times today, somebody from Raytheon's going to thomasnet.com looking for a supplier. They don't go there because I have jokes or cute dogs.
Right.
This is what they use to do their job. So we would capture that data, and I would bring that to my client that wants to sell Raytheon. Now, nobody else in the world has this data. You can't find it at Google.
Right.
And that was the unfair advantage I had. So we were collecting, at the time, 2 trillion bits of data, intent data. And I had engineers on my marketing team. I'd talk to my client. They would write the content. We would rub the HubSpot tool. And we made clients millions of dollars.
Wow.
Millions. Now, this is 2013. And the funny thing is, between 2013 and 2017, I taught a whole generation of engineers that if you download an ebook on Davis Company's website,
right,
a sales rep's going to call you.
Yes.
And the young engineers started saying, you know what, I don't want to talk to anybody yet because I'm still in my research stealth mode.
Right.
And so you saw HubSpot changing from an inbound methodology to sort of flywheel, more ABM, as they were adjusting to the demands of the industry. But when I was at ThomasNet, I was an independent rep. I wasn't in fact, when I met you.
Yeah, that's right.
And because I'm passionate about every company I work for, people thought I was an employee, but I wasn't.
Okay.
And
I did think you were an employee.
Yep. And I tell you, I started my own company called Industrial Marketing. I have a business partner who's 41, probably the smartest man I've ever met in my life. And he's a combination of a sales guy that's run sales teams of 100. He really understands technology, and he's got marketing instincts like I've never met. And we talk about the stuff that we're seeing. And so we started, the one thing that was very clear to me was, if you fly to Chicago and you're one of the 100,000 people at IMTS a few weeks ago, and you come to my booth and you come up and start talking to me, right away I'm sizing you up and I can say, hey, you're a qualified buyer.
Right.
Hey, you're a company that could buy from me. Now you might buy from me 5 years from now, but you're somebody that I'm going to put and I want to stay in touch with. Likewise, I don't expect to sell everybody there. IMTS, maybe there's 30 or 40 people that fit.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I thought it was me.
So anyway, this was the interesting thing. So if somebody goes to your website today and spends 2 minutes, and I can identify the pages that they're on,
Right.
and I can identify the company, even if you don't tell me who you are, we've created a methodology to start to help the salesperson say, okay, I'm going to call the company tomorrow. I'm going to ask for Mark Augustinelli, who's the VP of Engineering, and I'm going to apologize for the interruption because, Mark, I don't cold call people I don't know, and I don't link in with people that I don't know, but I'm curious. Somebody from your company spent 2 minutes on my website looking for a process called plastic chrome plating. I'm an engineer. Can I help you? Do you have a project that you're working on? And what's quite interesting, by taking that approach, which is similar to a trade show, why'd you come up? How can I help you? The young engineer would open up. Now they felt empowered to do that. And so we built this software. I've been helping hundreds of manufacturing clients, smaller clients, that didn't have the budget to pay for HubSpot, didn't have the money to pay for someone in marketing that really needs to understand this. And I leveraged what I call my superpower, what I've done studying the supply chain and the industry engineer buyer, because I don't believe that you can just throw up a website or do some tactic to necessarily get them to become a client. It's too technical a sale. It's a long sales cycle. There are typically multiple people that are involved in a sale. So it's not point, click, and buy. It's not.
Yeah, it's not Amazon.
No. And if I'm selling women's shoes, I want as many people on my website as possible. If I'm a small machine shop in Marlboro, I can't do 100 quotes a month. I don't have the bandwidth. I'm looking for 2 or 3 really qualified folks.
Right.
So when you talk about marketing, a lot of people think more is better. And if I'm a brand new company, I want more is better. But if I'm an established company, I've got great word of mouth. My software identifies that anonymous visitor. I help monetize that money and say, oh, somebody from 2 towns over was here. Hey, I know Mark. Gee, I'm going to call him up.
Right.
And all of a sudden, that's where that sort of that local knowledge and having that. So that's where I am today. And I've leveraged my instincts, my curiosity, and I really want to deeply understand that buying process, because to me that's the core of business. And when I think about the inefficiency, or go back in time. I think the telephone was invented in New Haven, Connecticut in the 1870s. There were 50 people with phones in New Haven, Connecticut, and they created the first phone book in New Haven, Connecticut. And then you had ThomasNet, 1898. So now imagine 1898. You're a manufacturer in Marlborough, Massachusetts. You open up the Thomas Registry. It's got all the manufacturers saying, there's a guy up in Maine that does something. Are you gonna send a telegraph? Are you gonna we're not texting. Okay, if there's not a car, so I guess I'm gonna get on the stagecoach or get on the train, and 3 days later I'm gonna go up and talk to them and sort of, hey, can you do this? Because we're sort of used to having that conversation. Now I think about trade shows again, because when I walk up to that show, they've got the best people there, and if I ask you a question, I can tell in how you answer me if you really know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
But let's talk about the experience on a website. I got to look around. I got to look. Engineers care about technical capabilities. They care about capacity. They care about certifications. They don't care about pretty.
No.
And so, anyway, I think about that experience, and I think about how AI is really helping the engineer and helping the supply chain person become super supply chain people and super engineers. Because the engineer, AI is really good at taking a lot of very technical data and structuring it in a way that you can do that.
It down.
Exactly right. So that's what we're doing now, and I'm having a lot of fun as I'm looking forward to. We've been in the age of search, since the mid 1990s, and we're still in the age of search. Google is still very important. And over the last few years, we started with Siri and Alexa. We started to get into the age of answers. I could ask them a question, and they could get to me. But now we're in the age of agents. ChatGPT and Claude and all of these other folks. I can now, I can send an agent out and say, summarize this contract for me. Go out and find me 50 companies that look like this. So instead of me sitting there and doing that work manually, I can then take the report and then analyze that and use my brain and say, okay, these are the 5 best companies to do that.
Right.
And what I'm really excited about is taking this approach to the supply chain, because supply chains are very inefficient. And when I was listening to a podcast with Elon Musk the other day, and he was talking about this new, he wants to have an efficiency office for the government.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And so when you're thinking about how we do things, and how we've always done things, there has to be a radical transformation when 23% of our federal budget goes to interest payments.
Right.
And when I needed to get a passport recently, it took 8 weeks for me to get a passport.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Right.
I mean, Amazon doing this stuff. So I keep thinking about if I'm a supply chain person at NASA, and I'm looking for someone that can do very, very technical things. The way it's done today, somebody from the supply chain person is first concerned with your certifications. Are you woman-owned? Do you have this AS91 certification? So I make a list of 5 companies, and I send it over to the engineer. Engineer calls the companies, and none of them can do what I want.
Right.
But imagine the software tool that we're building. I'm going to be able to structure the data in a way that articulates every theoretical thing you should be able to do based on the equipment that you have in your factory.
Oh.
I'm going to structure that in a way so that any AI tool that comes to your website, because it's not going to be human beings in the next few years, is going to be able to know exactly. Now, imagine ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter has 1 million resumes, but it finds the 5 most relevant resumes. I look at NASA, and NASA's looking for companies in the country with certain certifications that can do some things, and all of a sudden, this tool is going to be able to make that match. Now an engineer is talking to an engineer like I would do at a trade show. And that's really been the philosophy.
So you're really trying to make it more like the human experience.
100%.
Like you kind of have that vision of.
I keep going back to the 1880s. And
that's what I'm saying.
That's exactly, and that's, everybody thinks that, ChatGPT, it's magic. No, it isn't.
Right.
It's giving me 100 agents that can do the work that I would have been doing myself.
So, just faster 100%. And with less sweat.
But if you understand artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's stupid. By itself, it doesn't know what to do. And I on my website, I coined a term. Does your website, is it the whole source of truth of what you can do? Because I look at thousands of websites. I look at websites that people have spent $100,000 and people that have spent $1,000. And I will always call up the owner of the company and I'll ask a question. Do you do this? And they'll say, yeah, I do that. I say, well, you don't see it on your website. So we built this discovery process that I created for small business that allows them to start thinking this way and organizing their stuff. Look, there are incredible marketing people in this world, and they're talented user experience, talented branding people, all this stuff. I don't do that.
Right.
I focus on revenue and understanding that and helping the owners of companies be able to do this. Then I said, then go. I mean, I am a full service agency, but if you've got someone you like, take this model and go have them implement it.
Did you, when you were going through your career, did you ever Were you ever faced with like the decision, I have to get into sales or marketing, as opposed to the marriage that you've continued through your career?
So I think that because I've always had a sales aptitude, I've always had a talent, I've always had the ability to get people to trust me quickly.
Yeah.
I recognize that marketing people are a lot smarter than I am. And I started reading books and meeting every marketing person. When I was at AT&T Interactive, the yellowpages.com, I sold more people than anybody. And the VP of marketing flew out from California one day. She called me the day before. She said, Mark, I'm coming. I need you to go out. We're going to sell a video. I said, what? Well, do you have anything on it? No, we're going to create it. You're going to do it. And so I sold the first video for AT&T, and I forget what year it was. But what was interesting to me, and Tina and I have been friends forever. She's a brilliant marketer. But when I went out to see you, I'm always curious, like what do you do? Why do you do it, and why should I trust you? Those are the things that always. So I went out to this company. We didn't have any product. I sold 2 videos on the first day just by being human. And I just think about if I want to do business with a local person, that's what I want to know. And so, again, if you're a sophisticated business and you've got other things going, but I'm talking about small business now. Yeah. At the core, what makes you human, and thinking about that is been probably the biggest thing for me. But sales and marketing are one and the same. And I see so many organizations where marketing people make fun of sales and salespeople blame marketing. And I say this to my sales friends, marketing's job is to get the right qualified person to my website. Mm-hmm. The fact that young people don't fill out forms and they're not going to give you a lead, that's not marketing's fault. That's a function of the way people behave.
Buyer behavior.
So now we have to figure out intent signals and try to be Columbo and work hard. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy job. But it's great when I get someone calls me up and wants to do business.
Rarely happens.
Right, exactly right. Yeah. So I always push back on my salespeople when they blame marketing, and likewise I'm always challenging marketing. How often do you go and spend a day with a salesperson and listen to the customer about the questions, the problems they have? One of the things that HubSpot taught me was that when I would, because of the data we were collecting, and when I was with clients, I would talk to the salespeople. What are the last 5 phone calls you get? What were they about? What were the problems they were asking you to solve? And then when we'd capture this from the 20 or 30 salespeople in a company, I'd say, which ones are these the most important? And that's the book, the ebook, the content that we would write first. Right. Because if that's the problem someone's calling, if I can articulate that here, I've got a better chance. And there's a company in Hudson, Massachusetts, and I'll never forget. It was an engineering company, and the CEO, the very first month we did this, we had 60 inbound leads, and he told me 58 were qualified. And he couldn't believe it. And he said, before we used to get all these reports from the previous, and we had all these clicks and all this traffic, but the salespeople were wasting their time. But just by understanding, listen to your customer, identify the way people are searching, using the data points that are out there. But there's still a lot of hard work. This is not e-commerce, point, click, and buy.
And to your point about the HubSpot, like, what are you going to do when you said, what are you going to do when you sell those 10 moving companies? It's like, I also find that when you're talking to your customer, in my experience, when you're talking to your customer about the problems you solve for them, it narrows the scope of your target.
Correct.
Which is tremendously helpful as a salesperson.
100%.
Right, salespeople love to sell everything to everyone.
And
it's fool's gold.
And I tell people, I said, look, that's why, the concept of the page level marketing, websites don't make you money.
No.
Understanding how people are searching based on the query, and we can get that data from Google Console, and then testing the page. I don't, just because someone, searches, that doesn't mean they're going to buy. But it gives you a place to start instead of I need to write some content. I said, great. What content do you want to write? It's sort of like somebody will call me up. I get this call every week. Mark, my website sucks. I need a new website. And I said, well, why do you need a new website? I need more leads. I'm not getting enough leads. Well, if I could use your website that you have now and fix it and get you leads, is that okay, or do you just want to spend money on a website?
Right.
They look at me and say, well, you could do that? I said, well, I don't know. Let's see. And by putting the software on to see, are you getting the right audience? If you want to sell Raytheon and there's 50 people from Raytheon visiting your website, no one's buying, well, that's a different problem than you got 100 people that look like my wife that's never going to buy, right? And so you got to start with your audience. And it's a process that you have to build. So I get calls all the time. Listen, I've got $3,000 a month. I want you to buy some ads on Google. And I say, no, I don't.
To who?
Why don't you go and spend it on a lottery? I mean, you need to understand that. And a lot of times we can figure that out by talking to your existing customers and why they bought from you and how they search and, sort of where that is. And so that's really how, we fell into this whole AI approach. Building this classifier was getting the data in a format that makes sense to us is the critical issue.
That makes sense.
And I think about supply chain people don't understand engineering, and engineering doesn't understand supply chain, but AI can make them both so much better.
Certainly closer.
Absolutely.
Certainly closer.
And I actually see I'm going to have an AI agent that's my super engineer that's going to be able to vet you without having a human being do it.
Right.
The same way with supply chain. A lot of things that on the initial sourcing is going to go away. When it comes to negotiation, I mean, supply chain people do an awful lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're critical to profitability of manufacturing. But when I say supply chain for this conversation, it's really about the initial getting to the dance, getting on that short list. And that can be replaced by an AI machine. And it's being done today.
Right. Now, when I think about your career, you've referenced some huge companies, but I know you as more of the small business guy, serving small business,
Correct.
Working as a small business owner. And
Yep.
was that intentional?
Very intentional. I love enterprise level stuff. What HubSpot does is incredible. I think it's the best CRM in the world. But 98% of my clients can't afford.
Right.
It's not the $1,000 a month, but it's the people to run it.
Right.
It's all the work that you have to do it, and it could be overkill. So when I built our software, I've got all kinds of enterprise analytics. I've got heat maps. I tape record the sessions, because sometimes you'll have someone with good marketing instincts at a small company, the owner, and sometimes you just have a salesperson that's curious. But we pulled all this together in a tool that's less than $500 a month, and with no contract, so that I can provide the same advantage.
But was that decision conscious because you didn't like the bureaucracy of working at a big company, or because you thought the money was in small business?
Big companies have plenty of money. They've got the smartest marketing people in the world.
Right.
I get really concerned with the small company in rural Massachusetts, Maine.
I guess to clarify my question, I don't mean the company you're trying to sell to. I mean Mark working. Like, you were working for some massive companies.
Oh, yeah.
And now you chose to go out on your own. Like, what was that decision-making criteria?
You know what? I think it just had to do with the flexibility of never missing a kid's soccer game and choosing that. I mean, that was really my choice. And in all of these smaller companies that I worked for, I was financially very successful, and they kept offering me to run bigger divisions. But I can focus my energy on my family and my clients, and I don't need to be.
And did that kind of change when your kids arrived, kind of thing?
Sure. When I was at ZipLink, the publicly traded internet service provider, I was flying out to San Francisco every week.
Oh,
and my kids were 1, 2, 3 years old.
Yeah.
And when the bubble crashed, now the kids were getting into soccer age and all that stuff. So. That's what
made it. Okay, cool.
That was really.
That makes sense.
But I still think I would have probably left. For me, it was more. I was blessed to have three great kids and a wife of 34 years. So that's really been.
That's been the main. That makes a ton of sense. Were there decisions along the way? Did you have any opportunities you ever look back and regret passing on career wise?
Wow, that's a great question. When I was in the internet VP of sales, I was getting calls all the time, really interesting stuff. But I look at the culture of the company, and I looked at the stability of the company. I remember there was a company that I turned down. There was a startup. I presented and talking about what I was doing, and they ended up going public. They got bought out by another company, and I could have made a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad I didn't. It was too risky. It was too risky. AT&T was a secure place at the time.
Right.
And that was a risk, and I don't regret it at all.
Yes.
But, it was just
it was just kind of that.
Yeah. I've never gone because of money to any job.
Yeah.
I've always looked at the culture. When I walk into manufacturer, I can tell from the front desk receptionist and watching the way people talk to each other if that's a company I want to work with.
Interesting.
I say no to a lot of people.
Okay.
If you're going to yell, if I see an owner yelling at an employee, he's going to yell at me. He's going to blame me if something goes wrong.
Right.
And you have to have patience in the sales and marketing of manufacturing stuff. I don't know what's going to work. I can't make a baby in a day. There's a process to make a baby. It's a process to learn how people behave, the buyers, the engineers, and how your salespeople are following up and what people are doing. So that's what I tell everybody. Do not expect me to come in here and magically.
Yeah, be Jesus incarnate. Right. So like sitting here today, doing what you're doing today, does it surprise you, or are you kind of like, this is kind of expected?
What do you mean?
Like the way your career evolved?
I guess it's just been what I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started my own business 8 or 9 years ago, it was because I was worried that ThomasNet.com was still a privately held company. And I always was worried that what if somebody buys ThomasNet and decides they don't need the internet, the independent rep channel. So when I started building my own business, sure enough, 2 years ago, ThomasNet was bought by this billion-dollar company called Xometry, and a year ago, October, they said to everybody, no longer. Now they offered people a W-2, but that's I haven't worked for anybody in a long time.
Right.
So for me, that security, and of course, I get up and work every day because I love what I do.
Yeah.
This has never been. For most of my career, most of the companies I've worked for, it hasn't been a job.
Yeah, which is awesome. One thing that I've always, I think when you and I first met, I was just getting married.
Yep.
Probably that 2013 time
I remember.
frame.
I remember.
And I was always impressed by your relentless pounding of the pavement. Yep. Like you, when I thought about people working hard, Mark is a guy I think of as someone who works hard. Yep. Maybe take it down a different track. How have you been able to do that? I mean, I just think about your team at home, your wife and your family.
Yep.
Like, how do you manage that? How do you manage that? Because I don't, we played golf. Yep. We've had beers together, breakfasts together, and you hear it's unfortunate. Yep. But you hear other people and they complain about their wife or their family. Right. And you were always someone that couldn't wait to talk about home and family, which I always thought was such an endearing quality, by the way. When I was 10 years younger at the time, so I'm 28 years old, 29 years old, going, I want my life to turn out like that, not the guy drinking the beer complaining about his wife. So like, has it been effortless or has it been conscious?
No, it's being married is hard work, but it's a choice. And when Ziplink went out of business, and now I've got kids, and I'm coaching them in everything, every team sport, and I was amazed at how many fathers didn't show up to be with their kids. They would be out golfing on the weekends. And so my children, and what was always important to my wife and I, she gave up her career. She worked for the phone company when we had kids, and so that was our priority.
Yeah.
I will just tell you, I want my wife to write a book about what I call the tugboat parenting. One of the things, my wife grew up in South Lawrence, and she was the youngest of 8, and her dad passed away just before she was born. But she has a very simple, very common sense, maybe my mother-in-law, approach to life. And with children, they understand very, very simple concepts. And so we would talk to our children, and my wife would say, well, if you see Sally picking on Mary,
right,
and you don't say anything, you're a barge. And barges in life don't get anywhere. We want you to be the tugboat. It's okay to protect Mary and stand up to the bully. And you'll never get in trouble for that. It was always about, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are nice people and they're not so nice. And if they're not so nice, don't play with them. It's just very simple sort of concepts to our children. And so having, you met my youngest daughter golfing, Carrie, investment banker, very successful young woman at 26, but they're good people.
Yeah,
and that was something that we knew. You just don't sort of show up once in a while and sort of do it. But that's probably and it's hard. I mean, my wife is a saint. I mean, she puts up with me long hours. But
No, you're on a plane. You're at a networking dinner one night and a plane the next morning.
She comes with me to a lot of events now. That
especially since the kids are older.
Yeah, and we have a dog now that the kids are out of the house, and so we both fight over the dog, what side of the bed the dog's gonna sleep on. But if you marry the right person, it's easy.
Right.
And it's hard. It's not simple.
Right. It's the most important decision you make in your life, for sure. Did you when the ZipLink thing went south?
Yeah.
Were you financially secure enough in your family where you could pause and reflect, or was it like you were still pretty young at that point in time? Was it like an oh shit moment?
Yeah, it was an oh shit moment.
Yeah.
And nobody saw it coming. It was like the 3 weeks before, Williams Communication offered $42 a share for a stock, and we were like $8 a share, and I had all this stuff that would have vested. And the owner said no, and then the next week the PSI net that had $1 billion was gone. Everybody was gone. It's like, oh my God.
Wow.
So that was that close to.
How quickly did you land on your feet after that?
I'm just trying to think about. I had a really good network, and I think I got into the. I think it was yellowpages.com after that. I don't remember my resume exactly what I did just after.
Because that's a tough.
It was tough, but my wife was still. The kids were young enough. And I think she was still working part-time at the phone company. But, I did whatever I had to do to survive.
Yeah.
You pick up a job, you're selling, so.
So I feel the reason that I was inspired to start this podcast, similar, people like you. Like, I met so many people in I think Monday is my 15th year at the Davis Companies.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it's been such a blessing because I've met so many people being in sales that love what they did and never had any idea they'd be doing it. And so, like, when I think about it, I go, we got so many kids coming out of college or coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And I had a dad that was very much like, pick your job, and that's going to be your job. And he's an engineer, right? Yep. So he's got a very logical brain. And I just knew that wasn't me. When you talk to kids, you've got your own, obviously, that have gone through some of this already.
Yep.
But advice for recent college grads, recent high school grads, as they enter the more formal workforce, like what advice would you, pass on to them from your experience?
I would tell you not to be afraid of making a mistake when you're starting out. My 3 daughters went to small liberal arts colleges.
Yeah.
And one had a passion for chemistry. One was more political science, and one was a math quant. And so
wow, so a range.
And so when they were in college, well, first before they went to high school, and they were applying for college, I had them all fill out a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And I had them put all of the things that they were interested in, and then for the schools they were most interested in, we went and they linked in with a graduate of that school. And we sent a message just saying, look, I'm really interested in being an engineer at WPI. I noticed, would you take a call? Could you share with me some insights? Because, you want to talk to different people about, okay, I'm about to go someplace for 4 years. This is the right thing for me. So when my kids were juniors in college, they did the same thing. And my daughter Carrie connected with someone who was a trustee at Bates College who worked at Barclays Bank, and she's the last person I thought that would have gone into investment banking.
Right.
But she's been there for 3 years and she's done incredibly well. My daughter Molly, who I always expected to be a math person, I thought maybe she'd go into engineering.
Yeah.
She's doing stuff at a private equity firm in Boston, flying around the country at 27 years old. And again, a connection through at Colby to Citibank, what was her first job, and Carrie and my daughter Shannon just graduated as a physician assistant, and I, she was really working for about 6 months to meet the right people, but she really wanted to work at Children's Hospital, and there was a undergraduate who's a physician from Connecticut College, who was a teacher at Children's. Shannon met her. Next thing I know, she's starting a job January at Children's. So, but it wasn't just a few phone calls.
Yeah, initiative. Serious initiative.
I'd say you really have to looking for a job. It's not, I sent out a few resumes. My kids know, they see how I work, and I wish I was smart enough to just make 5 calls and make 4 sales, but that's just not the way the world is.
It's not.
But if I'm calling 10 people that are really interested, last month my website, Industrial Marketing, is #1 in Google in about 20 countries. I had 700 visitors that found my website. I don't advertise it. 10 of those people read a blog because my software told me 6 industrial websites to take inspiration from. Nobody called me. Nobody filled out a form. But I knew the names of those 10 companies. So the next day, I called the front desk, Davis Manufacturing, 40 employees. I talked to the receptionist. Hey, I'm Mark Manuel. I own a small company in Amherst, New Hampshire called Industrial Marketing. Look, I have some software that told me somebody from your company read a blog I wrote about 6 industrial websites. Now, I don't think anybody was bored that found my company. Are you guys thinking about doing some marketing? All 10 companies said yes. Then I have a database of every employee at that company, and I say, hey, I noticed Mark Augustinelli is the VP of Marketing. Can I introduce myself? So of the 10 people, 5 agreed to sit with me, and 4 bought from me because they had intent. They were in market. The other 5 thanked me for calling them, said, Mark, call me in 6 months. Hey, we were just fooling around. We're doing that. And I think that's the expectation that you have to have. But I discovered something that was, and what was interesting, of those 4 other companies, the people that did it were recent college graduates that were looking to do marketing, but they didn't know anything about industrial marketing.
They didn't know where to start.
And so when they did the Google for industrial marketing websites, they found me.
Interesting.
So again, I don't need this. I can't sell 7. I don't want to be that big of a company.
Yeah.
But I find some really awesome people that I can help, and that's always been the fun. I get more joy out of that. I had a client call me the other day and said, I can't believe it, Mark. We just landed this customer. We had him on our website. I used your software. I called him back like I told me, and it looks like it's going to be a 7-figure multi-year sale.
Right.
Awesome. But I said, listen, all I did was bring you the data. You guys are awesome. They're on your site because you can solve that problem. So that makes me happy. Incredibly happy. When I worked at the bigger companies, I didn't really have people that would give me testimonials.
Right. You don't get the feedback and the joy. It's someone once asked me what's my favorite part of working at Davis, and I said, and my answer was watching a customer's face become a champion. Yep. That feeling is the
best.
It's just like it's as close to sports as you can get in the business world, at least for me. I loved your point though about helping your daughters network.
Yep.
And you brought back. I'm not going to go as far as say PTSD, but I remember doing that in high school and in college, and my parents being like, "You got to be doing this stuff."
Yep.
And I remember being resistant to it. And now looking back on it, all of the good things that happen out of it were the way. Did you find any resistance from your daughters, or were they pretty good?
No, because they know that Dad was the LinkedIn guy.
Right. So it's like there's no,
And I just said, listen, the people hiring you are going to be old guys, or women too. But I mean, it's primarily that
Right. They're going to want to. They're used to connecting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I found because I had 3 daughters, and it's still a man's world. I wanted them to learn how to lose, how to have rejection and get back up. And, it was all about preparation. It was all about doing your best. And it's okay not to be successful.
To fail.
And we understand that in sales. And I think that's one.
It's a hard skill.
It is, but it's one that they understand.
Yeah.
Because you don't always get the job you want. You're not going to always, not la-las. And I just think that, I think the last generation that was giving out a prize for just participating sort of missed out on that. And when I looked, I got married a little bit later in life. Most of the people, the kids that I was coaching, had fathers and mothers that were 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
And I could see a huge difference in the way that they raised their kids and the way that I raised their kids. And I look at how successful my kids are, and I just think that a lot of love. I think that being empathetic was a real attribute that I think all three of my kids have, and that just came from
and resilience. And being resilient. Yeah, it's I know when I coach and sales teams or mentor sales teams, that my mantra is always first downs, not touchdowns.
Exactly.
Like we're not trying to sell the whole thing today. We're trying to move the ball down the field, and you might have 10 conversations today. If one is good, that's a win.
Yep.
Like all we're trying to do is stack together wins consistently.
I tell my clients, my job is to get the ball to the 90-yard line.
Yeah.
You got to put it
You got to punch it in.
Right. And so we may be doing a lot of different things, but here they are. That looks like they're ready to go. Go get it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, Mark, I appreciate you coming on.
Are you kidding?
Dude, I told you, 54 minutes. Dude, we could have done 6 hours.
Thanks, Mark.
But I really appreciate you coming on. Any final words you want to share with the audience?
No. I will just tell you, the Davis Company, I've known them since the S-Bain days. Mark was on the membership committee with me. I was the board of directors. Brendan, this is an incredible company. And you've helped me place so many of my engineer friends' kids and people that I know. So I am called the manufacturing ambassador. I love to connect to people.
You do.
So please, if you follow me on LinkedIn, Mark is amazing. This company's awesome. And Mark, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks again for coming on,
Thanks,
man.
Mark. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.